Welcome to FMRPG. I'm Richie Buzzkill, the tabletop RPG show that makes sure your mom also rolls initiative while she's getting Cheetos for us. I have tonight I have Kayla with me once again,
Hi, I'm Kayla. It's me.
and I have Noland. What's up, Nolan?
Not much. Doing well. Yourself?
We've just had some major events, and it has reinvigorated me to come back and like be on screen again. And that those major events are: we finished your Marvel superheroes game, and we just got back from Gencon it was like 2 weeks ago. But I'm still recovering. I mean, you were still recovering last week, so you know.
A little bit of laryngitis here and there. It'll be fine.
And Kayla has been traveling all over the world for more weddings because we're all that age where people are getting married still. So
True. Got lost in the Northwoods for a while. There are places in the United States that still do not have cell phone or internet access, and I found that out recently.
I mean, you could probably write an RPG about how scary that is for people.
I really wanted to run a horror RPG while we were there. I was like, this needs to happen. We need to Purgatory House, or we need to I don't know, Kids on Bikes. Something creepy needs to happen. I don't know.
I mean,
it never happened.
Yeah, that is like sort of the, there's always we for those that are just joining us, we talked about we have this ongoing friend convention where we all kind of get together in one place, our group of friends. And there is always this element of like, well, if we just go get a cabin in the woods, right? Then it is like aka it's the plot of the movie will eventually write, like we're going to go play RPGs in the woods and shit goes wrong. And or it's this creepiest shit because we don't have phone and internet, right? So we are disconnected from our modern selves, and our secondary brains are no longer helping us, right? And so there's always a vote or two, or a hey, what if we do this, every time we'd cycle around talking about this. But we also Kayla's castle, the Lady Kale's castle is amazing. So I think that's probably where we're gonna end up for a while. So
Unfortunately, the desire to have like food and beer and stuff nearby always wins out.
Right. The idea that we don't really want to cook our way through a weekend, because that's kind of the downside of doing your own thing. And I mean, it's kind of nostalgic in my head, but I haven't had to do it in 20 some years, so maybe I would think it would suck.
The biggest horror story we could tell, having to cook for ourselves.
Yeah, and well, it's the dishes, really. The cooking, I think we have a lot of people enjoy the cooking. It's the dishes and pans and pots, scrubbing pots
True.
all weekend. Like when inevitably someone makes something and burns it, and I mean, we're actually pretty decent cooks for the most part, but there's gonna be one of those pans that just sucks. So
Something's gonna go sideways.
right. But we're the horror. We'll get to the, it wasn't a horror show, but it's always a bit of a horror show at Gen Con. So we'll get to that later after we talk about what we've been up to, it's been a while since we talked about what we've been up to. And it's mostly been playing Marvel superheroes and doing kind of our other standard games on the side, right?
Yep. Good old 1980s phase rip Marvel TSR.
Yeah. Well, before that, because we're gonna spoil the ending because Kayla didn't come to the end the last episode of Marvel. I believe you're like Tyler's giant game he was running ended while we were not online, right? That you finally got to finish that
Yeah.
3+ year D&D campaign.
Yeah, our 3.5 year D&D campaign.
Oh no.
Um the Mad Mage.
Hold on. Uh bandwidth is low. Is bandwidth low? Okay, well. All right, that'll be fun for those on YouTube because the Zoom bandwidth went down and got all of our images real low. So let's see how that goes, everybody. Uh, so well, I mean, was it a satisfying ending? Because that's always the question about these long 3-year campaigns.
Yeah, it was a good ending. We almost all died. Um, but our wizard saved his first and only cast of wish for when all his friends were dead to wish them back to life. So we weren't all dead. We were rolling death saves at that point,
Okay.
but he wished for us all to be restored to full health and was successful, and that allowed us to clinch an epic victory from what was absolutely going to be a TPK if he had not done that.
Right. Well, I mean, while I think that's the most productive version of Wish, because it's less likely to boomerang back upon you, it still should boomerang back upon you. I am a bit old school when I think about Wish, as it should be a lesson every time. That's the kind
That messes you up if you cast it, even though he just brought us back from death saves. It like drops you to like, I think it's no strength, basically. So you can't stand up anymore.
Oh, well
Like, there's a big consequence to casting it.
that's kind of rad. Like I'm
So
I think that's yeah, that's kind of cool because that's kind of how in Dungeon Crawl Classics you have to kind of like, if you want to make sure that you get a good result on the table, you kind of have to spend some of your stats to do so. So temporarily.
yeah, I don't know that it like drops you instantly. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think it may be like one of those every single time it hits your turn, you go lower and lower to a certain point. Or like whenever you use any other spells, it drops you. But there is a big consequence to using Wish. That thankfully we were towards the end of the fight and he didn't have to really suffer the consequences of, because that recharge, shoot, we had a fighter that had over 300 hit points. So he went from death saves to 300 again. So
And you might tell Tyler to turn down whatever he's streaming because he's killing your bandwidth. So
he's playing Baldur's Gate.
Oh,
the bastard.
So you should tell him to quit it.
Yeah, I'll send him a message.
Go play a real game. Stop. Anyway, yeah, so we were playing Marvel superheroes over the summer, right? Noland, it was mostly
Yep. Yeah, after our on this very podcast, we talked about superheroes and RPGs and what that meant and what the history of that and so forth. And yeah, afterwards, as I recall, you had an interest in playing old phase rip Marvel.
Well, it was the actually the game I actually wanted to play right off the bat was just rolling a random ass character with the random ass character generation for Marvel superheroes.
Yeah, we did that one night.
Yeah, which is like the most. It's somehow. It somehow makes a cohesive character most of the time, and I still don't know how that's like a magic trick to me. Like I don't, because it doesn't.
It doesn't always.
No,
but...
it doesn't always. But the tables are not coherent in any way, shape, or form, and yet somehow, when you're rolling, I'm like, okay, I can get that. I can get that. I can get that, and it I mean, I did trade something out, but it was like
Yeah, that was within the rules of like optional powers you could take. Like, yeah,
right.
that was something we frequently didn't use years ago in high school. Was like everybody just has to roll their numbers with it, but the rules as written say like a lot of those characters have a lot of those powers you can roll on the table have like complementary powers, and you can forego one of your random rolls to take of another power to take the complementary power and make a free choice there. So that's kind of one of the tricks of how it, keeps you somewhat coherent, is that, if you get fire generation, then you might also get fire manipulation. So you can actually control instead of just setting things on fire and hoping for the best.
I mean, that is kind of the most fun. Let's be honest. It's just like we're just gonna set things on fire. I don't need to control it. Like that would be
Right.
that would be unplayer character. Like
exactly. No, but those.
What am I, a superhero?
Yeah, those tables in the Ultimate Power book are super 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 wonky. Like you can literally random roll up everything from a street level whatever character like Daredevil or something straight all the way up to friggin' Kayla rolled a goddess, right? Like Thor kind of situation. Like you can roll it all, and that was one of the selling points of the old Marvel phase rip ages and ages ago. That giant table in the back, allows Galactus to exist in the same world with Squirrel Girl and everybody else, right?
Galactus should be scared of Squirrel Girl. Let's be
I mean,
honest.
obviously he should, but
yeah, like I really think that it's one of those games that demonstrates what I like to call balances wishful thinking, and you might as well just go with not balancing anything because it just seems to people just figure out how like the world is not balanced for real. Like why balance your game? Clearly this is the better choice. As long as you can't actually choose the thing and you just randomly get the thing, then why maybe that's the balance, is like you can't just pick the thing.
Right. Those few rolls you make at the start of character creation are literally the most important rolls you will ever make in the whole game. Right. Like, determining what what type of superhero you are, whether you're, a mutant or an altered human or a, god or whatever. And then, finding out how many powers you have, because you can roll low on how many powers you have and not have very many powers. Like it's wild, right? And then just randomly generating your powers and your stats, like that can those few half dozen to a dozen rolls at the start of the game, that's like gonna do it, because like the advancement is kind of shit in the the advancement system is kind of shit.
Oh boy, yeah, that the advancement. I love that the advancement system helps you keep the characters on a good guy superhero footing, because you don't get what is it called?
Karma. It's called karma.
You don't get karma unless you do good things, right?
Yeah.
And yes, it's
and act like a big damn hero. Yeah.
Right. But it takes so much karma to get anywhere. Like hundreds and hundreds of karma to just move your stat one category, that it is kind of ridiculous. Like I think I could have done it, but you have to like buy up each point, and each time you go further and further, it costs more and more, and
then you have to pay a big penalty for crossing the border between one level and from feeble to poor and poor to good, or poor to typical, typical to good. So far, yeah, when you cross those boundaries between the ranges that the stats live in, then you pay an extra penalty. And like, yeah, it's, and as far as the book's concerned, like the suggested awards are like not at all commiserate with the system. That's hundreds and hundreds.
No, it's more commiserate for spending it on rolls to make them work.
Yeah, and that is one of the tricks, is that the karma is both experience points to advance your character and a meta currency where you can say, hey, I'm going to spend some of my XP because I really want to succeed this time. I need to, I'm a big damn hero, and this is the critical moment in the thing where I throw the switch and save my friends or whatever, right? You can make sure you succeed at that point, but you are spending your XP for advancement, right?
Right. So yeah,
My favorite use of that, the karma spend, was being able to like pair up powers and use them together.
Oh yeah,
which I was bound and determined to turn into its own like attack.
Yeah, you were the only one who did any serious.
My character had telepathy and
cosmic
could unlock
awareness.
all of
cosmic
awareness. The knowledge of the universe. And I was like, I want to stream that into other people's heads as a weapon.
Yeah, you also you were the only one to really seriously play with the power stunting ability, which is in there, which is to say, like sometimes you'll see Iceman has ice generation, and in the old 80s cartoon or whatever, he used to blast ice in front of him so he could like skate around New York City with Spider-Man on ice bridges and so forth. And that's the whole notion of the power stunting in the system, is like, oh, you have a certain power, but you want to use it to kind of achieve the ends of a different power or tweak it slightly from its main use. You can try and do these what's called power stunts, and like the more frequently you do them, the more routine they become, the more you can bring them in, and eventually they just become another kind of version of the power that you have. The book has weird things to say about that, by the way. They tell you that if you find legitimate original like Marvel comic books where the character you're playing has used a power at least 3 times, then you can justify to your GM your character that if you're playing Spider-Man and he's used his webbing as a whatever, a slingshot like 3 times in the comic book, that your character should have this power stunt to do this.
hey kids, buy our comic books.
Buy more comic books.
Buy all the comic books, kids. You don't. This role-playing game that you could play forever. Matter of fact, you could play for 40 some years. That doesn't replace you buying our comic books. You just need to keep buying our comic books. This is what's funding this. Buy more comics.
Well, TSR thought they should buy more comic books too, so they eventually ended up selling their own comic books and fucking over their license with Marvel, which was
one of the more profitable parts.
One of the more smart things that leadership at TSR got up to back in the day.
Yeah, someday we'll do a history of TSR episode, because it's a wild
ideas
ride
from TSR leadership.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in our particular instance of the Marvel Universe, which I think even got a number just to sate someone that was into the numbered universe.
Yes.
Which I don't remember, which is irrelevant, but it did get a number. It was the 1980s and had an alternate timeline starting in World War II, right? So
yeah, we were playing in 1986. We had lots of 80s weirdness going on. I didn't want to do, I'm not a big canon person in anything, so I wanted to twist it somehow and bring it into kind of a different world that I can claim as my own and set up my own whatever. But yeah, I think we talked about this once before.
Oh yeah, we definitely did, but I just
just to refresh the users, right? Yeah, that I invented an alternate history beginning in World War II where the kind of Superman kind of unbelievable powerful superhero evolved during World War II and discovered their powers and became the Paragon, and you know literally from the 40s till the 80s kind of just altered reality to destroy nuclear weapons and ensure no villains got up to anything, and the world was just like in some ways better and in some ways totally under his uh control. But then he died in the 80s, and everyone, I created kind of, something I like to do in a campaign sometimes is like start with a power vacuum. Like, okay, somebody's been controlling the world with their superpowers for decades, and now they're dead, and it's all you all's problem. Like, figure out what's gonna happen. Like, all the supervillains are crawling uh back out of the muck and trying to assert themselves. Other people are trying to become heroes and replace him, and of course, a good, what would the 80s be without an Ayn Rand cult?
Well, it wasn't just an Ayn Rand cult. It was an Ayn Rand cult, Ayn Rand cult, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Run by a vampire who was like, "Oh, you're a vampire too, so clearly you believe like I do," because I was playing a vampire because that's what I rolled. But so that was an amusing encounter. But essentially, I do like that we had like the song of the session. You'd send out a song and a little news update of what's happened in the world in that day that we're gonna have that session. And
Yeah, popularity is a big thing in Marvel, so I wanted to show you guys how you were like being reflected in the media, but also it served a good purpose to like put a few bullet points in there to like kind of bring everybody's mind back to like what was happening in the 1980s. Like what was happening around this time, like yeah, so I thought that was helpful. I hope. I don't know if you guys liked it.
Well, it was like, oh, a lot of those songs I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that song. Others I was like, oh no, not that song. I have scars from listening to that song, and not because
Right.
it's something you cut yourself to, but it just was like, ooh, the 80s. But fun stuff nonetheless. So we had a romp. I mean, like we had recruited your cult to help us do things, right? Kayla, your goddess had a cult on Earth because she was popular enough.
Well, I had a church. I had a church following.
Sorry, this is that, like, I refer to every religion as a cult thing again. Sorry. Apologies to everyone, not really, but sure. Yes, your church. We recruited your church.
Lissa would insist that it's a church.
Right.
And she doesn't still understand why it was formed. Because where she's from, everyone's like her. So this makes no sense.
Right.
But
the 700 Club did not approve of you. Pat Robertson was not having it. Like,
I mean, I'd like
this is idolatry and this will not stand.
Yeah. I had like a whole storage warehouse full of like random shit that people sent me, because I decided that like while donations were probably a thing, more likely people were like crocheting shit or sending random arts and crafts projects or like very strange things. So that's what we had. I had all of us, I had like our whole Adventure League situation in crochet dolls somewhere in a warehouse.
Nice. I mean, it was it was great to just kind of randomly like run around and like, oh, there's another member of your church. Okay. All right. Clearly that's how we get into whatever admin building we needed to get into for reasons of
Yes. I very much ended up being like the Wonder Woman type character that definitely popped in and out at convenient times to them and had a weird following.
Right. And you know, I definitely was, like I said, I think originally is like I was the rejected Neil Gaiman character, vampire, you know, goth, not goth, but like new wave goth kind of like so very, you know, live for 100 years as an immortal, and you end up kind of like going with whatever trend is trendy at the time to that you feel comfortable with. So that was but he had been keeping a list of all the Paragon's ill associates since the 40s. So he had a grudge that he was trying to grind the axe with, and he turns out he got his wish. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Because the Paragon had fathered a child in France in his adventures there during the war, and everybody found out about it. And of course, when God has a child and it's not being controlled, or it's not can't control itself, everybody wants a piece of that, because you know you want more gods, right? You want to control a god so you can get your way. So he was in a dreamland that we had to venture forth into. So there was some fun, trippy, metaphorical adventure before we got to the hollowed out volcano where the child was kind of cocooned in it. And then, of course, just in the nick of time, the bad guys all showed up to fight over it. So
Why would an Ayn Rand cult and the government want access to a god? That seems odd that they would want that. What could they possibly?
what could they possibly want? And then, of course, Nolan pulls the one card he hadn't pulled yet, and the government apparently was employing Uri Geller. And kids, ask your grandparents about who Uri Geller is and how much of a straight fraud he was as a psychic spoonbender in the 1960s and 70s and early 80s. And so my favorite line of the whole campaign was, "I'm going to spend karma so I can use Uri Geller's head as a soccer ball." It was one of my favorite lines in the entire campaign. So
Yeah, there were some interesting bad guys. You got Carl Icahn and Uri Geller, and I needed a bad guy psychic from the 80s. And
it was like,
turns out it's going to be Uri Geller.
I mean, that's pretty easy. Pretty easy call now that I think about it. But we were all, one of the other players and I were like, "Oh, Uri Geller." Yeah. So, but it was a good old fashioned, everybody's fighting everybody. And then I'm not really super powerful enough, so I step into the trying to convince the child how to be, to release
How to rewrite reality.
Yeah, rewrite reality for their own good and for my own amusement. So, and basically all the bad guys' information got released, and there was a whole fun shitstorm. Back when information actually did things to people, that was one of my things I enjoyed about the 80s is, when, your ill deeds came to light with actual truth and evidence that people actually went to jail. And
there were consequences.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. That was a fun nostalgia trip. Someday I'm hoping for consequences again, everybody.
I think my favorite part about that game was the weird side game that Dan set up for just me, really, which was a tour of DC.
That is true. I set it in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s. I tend to set those Marvel things as in a city I know well, because yeah, AI can show you stuff, and like B, a lot of those things have those tables and stuff have, oh, you've got a slam result from like being a really huge, strong, the Hulk guy and punching somebody. If you get a really great result, you'll get a slam result, and they'll fly 10 city blocks, and it's like, that's a city I'm not familiar with. I don't know where that is, but if it's a city I know, like, oh, 10 city blocks is you land in right by this building, and I can work
Yeah,
with it then.
that was one of my favorite parts actually, when we were in that like water reserve and I punched someone a little too hard and realized that the direction that I punched them in would have landed them right in the hospital, like literally into the hospital. And I was like, this is fantastic. Chef's kiss.
That is the fun of running a game in a place and I think we found that Marvel Superheroes was actually developed in West Lafayette, Indiana, which is another place that some of us know something about, which I think is kind of amusing that I'm sure it's all about, I mean, Marvel is based in New York, let's be honest, but
yeah,
it's hilarious that they developed it in West
well, at least
Lafayette.
one of the designers was apparently set their campaign in West Lafayette, Indiana, because as I was rereading the books to go through all this, I found a side comment in like the core book that said like, oh, I play, most of the default setting is New York City, but set it in any city you like. I set mine in West Lafayette, Indiana. I was like, really?
Well, 10 blocks is a lot smaller in West Lafayette, but also if you just put it the same scale, then you're just like punching people into cornfields.
Like, very likely, yes.
Or into the university, like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of other things that they're punching people into.
Right. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about Marvel superheroes?
Everybody have a good time?
Yeah. No, I had a great time.
I had a great time.
I really enjoyed like, just pretending like I had my popped collar and my like spiky black mullet hair thing that they wore, and wearing a trench coat and not getting looked at because I was wearing a trench coat.
Right, exactly.
And, yeah. So.
Yeah, I just loved being dumb, like stat wise dumb, and having cosmic awareness as one of my my things. So instead of it being useful to me, I get to turn it into a weapon, of course, because reasons.
Great plan.
It hurts my head, so it'll hurt other people's heads too.
Yep. Yeah. I think I hit about the tone I wanted to, right? Like there was a bunch of corruption, a bunch of badness, but there was also some comedy elements and so forth. The bad guys were really bad and like whatever, and superheroes weren't always right. Superheroes were often somewhere in a morally gray area, but I didn't end up with, The Boys or, any of these games where the superheroes are just like truly corrupt to the core and the whole thing is like whatever. It still had some optimism to it, but it was mostly bad people doing bad things.
I mean, I think we had a good tone conversation, which helped. And I think that we all kind of like, wanted to play the system, which is the system. I mean, if I didn't want to play the system, I could just have 0 karma and just like be a bad guy, right? Like,
no.
You could just be I was like, oh, and the fact that I accidentally was spotted being a vampire once totally ruined my popularity for a little while, which was like, wait, don't they know? Anyway, never mind. But yeah, I think that the tone was great. The iconic and I'm using a bit of a pun because it's Carl Icahn as one of the bad guys. Characters, even though they were supposed to be good guys, they were definitely bad guys. I mean, actually, the icons were not bad guys. They were just being directed by bad guys. So,
it's true.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, and I do like the karma. I do like that aspect of the karma mechanic, that if you kill people or wantonly allow destruction and so forth, you can lose karma. And if you kill somebody, you lose literally all of it, which is like losing all experience points you haven't spent to advance your character and losing all hope of like bumping up your rolls and so forth. Like that's a pretty big penalty. And I'll frequently get criticism. I'll frequently hear criticisms of that game, like that. Oh, this is just some shackles they put on your character so they can't, do these kinds of things that are out of genre. And like, it does like make you think about doing it. But I will also say that the times I've had people do it and say, "Fuck my karma. I hate this guy so much. I'm fucking killing him." Like that's a much more impactful moment in that kind of system where like my character is willing to throw away their advancement to fucking kill this guy because I've really had it with them. Like so, I still like the system.
I liked the karma. It was interesting. Like I can see the benefits of having that as like a push for, from a therapeutic lens. Like I'm always making my people play good or at least neutral, not evil people. And that would definitely put that incentive in there to keep them on the good side of things.
Right.
So
Well, yeah, that and it is a system that reinforces the feel of the universe, so that's good. So, well, I mean, we'll talk about our other big event. I know, and some of us, Kayla couldn't come this year, but some of us, she usually gets to Gen Con, but was not able to this year. But Gen Con, everybody. Hey, now that my my voice sounds like I've just got back from Gen Con. So but yeah, it biggest year ever, 70,000 people. It felt big when we were there. It was too many damn people in Indianapolis bursting at the seams. Like,
Yeah, it's
seriously.
really, really full at this point. Like, yeah, all the trying to get a hotel and everything, just gets harder every year, and it's like it's not getting smaller. So yeah, it's probably too big at this point for where it is. But
But
they just signed a deal to stay there longer.
another 7 years to 2020 2030. So, yeah, I mean, there was some interesting logistical uh, choices that they made that made it hard to get. There was this line for this silly card game that just kind of
Something
like,
about something the mouse made or something.
yeah, so that just never ended. This line just kept forming and reforming. And you had to kind of like weave in and out of it to get anywhere. So like,
that was actually the game.
oh,
Like
well, if that was the game, then what were they selling on eBay for enormous amounts of money? But I mean, just like the ropes that they were the poles and the ropes, they were just selling those on eBay.
Commemorative ropes.
Yeah, signed by all. I passed away here, and just signed the rope or whatever, the pole.
Did they still have the giant board game bags this year roaming the halls?
Yes. So they haven't banned backpacks, and also the disturbing trend I saw, besides these board game backpacks that are literally the size of a person on people's backs, that will, like, if they turn, they're just gonna push people out of the way. The other one was, I saw people with suitcases, like roller bags, with them on the show floor, and like
not on Sunday, like
no, like on Thursday, like people with roller bags.
yeesh.
I
Like,
mean, if they don't have a room in downtown, what are you gonna do?
well, I get that, and there is a contingent of people that do a bit of vagrancy during Gen Con. They like sleep in the hallways. They find kind of like out of the way spots in the Indiana Convention Center, and just kind of like hold up till security finds them and kicks them out. Um, and the vagrancy was even helped by this line. It was able to reform for the next day at 6 p.m. the previous day. So there were like, anyways, there was like multiple lines going at all times, and it was I mean, Thursday, in some ways, Thursday felt like Thursday and Saturday felt like the busiest days in the show floor. And I did a bit of a different thing this year. I mean, I did play some games. Like I played like 2 games because I didn't. And we'll talk about some numbers about the games, like a number of events and stuff. Like trying to get into a game you want to get into is sort of like a crapshoot. And so I always like just kind of like uh, uh, Noland and one of our other friends, like they just get extra tickets for some of these games, and like I'll bum onto one of those tickets. So I played Root and Aliens, and on the official schedule, and I had a great time on those games. But it just one of those things where like it's sort of hard to get anything you actually want out of the event system. So I sort of didn't try. So most of my time was done where I was wandering around trying, talking to people and hanging out. So that was really more of a fly on the wall this year than doing all the gaming in the world. But
Yeah,
I have a question off of that. Dan,
Yeah.
how was it to like buy tickets and have a schedule
I
this
know.
year?
I bought ticket. The buying tickets goes to the like overcrowded thing. Um, for those that don't know, I normally GM and play with a group there at Gencon called Games on Demand, um, which runs a bunch of quick 2-hour demo pickup demos of indie RPGs, typically. Basically, not anything that's like super mainstream, but there's no exact rules around that. Uh, but basically not D&D. And I normally run games for them and play with them. Kayla obviously has been running games for them and played with them in the past. Also, yeah, and they didn't show up this year, partially because they had problems with personnel and enough people in leadership, and partially kind of they didn't really love the Gen Con's COVID policy, in terms of no vaccinations, nobody can ask anybody to wear a mask, that kind of thing. So they weren't there this year. So I actually had to buy tickets, and that goes right hand in hand with the hotels. Like buying tickets is a goddamn nightmare. I did it. I did surprisingly well. I got to play a lot of new games as a result. Yeah, as a result of getting there. But yeah, it was definitely a different experience, like following a ticketed, kind of thing, as opposed to just kind of going to Games on Demand and saying, "Hey, can I try something new with you guys?" Like that. It's a different kind of experience, right? I did okay. I think I liked it. I got to see some bigger games, but I haven't played some bigger games, so but a lot of Magpie stuff, that kind of thing.
Did Magpie have their own room this year again?
Magpie had a big old section on the floor of the football stadium.
Lucas Oil
Oh,
Stadium.
geez.
Yeah, so they were in a big section down there. They were running a lot of games. Like they were the sixth. There's like some people like have kind of combed through the number of games and look at the seats and stuff and all that, and they ran the sixth most games. Yeah, like the fifth or sixth most games at Gen Con was Magpie run.
And
Yeah, I can only speak for two years ago because I wasn't there this year, but they had their own giant room or segment of a convention space 2 years ago too. So I was wondering if they kind of showed up in the same force that they did.
yeah, it was a big force, but screaming out on the thing. I came back with laryngitis like the very Thursday night, like to the hotel room. I was already starting to lose my voice, yelling, playing rude out on the whatever with a billion other people there. DCC was down there too on the football
I
stadium floor.
I wonder if like that would be better suited for the board games. I'm not sure because you still have like rules and stuff that you're trying to hear there too. But with role playing games, it's like you have to hear everyone's speech all the time because it's all narrative driven. So, like, I can't imagine that was super fun out on the football field.
I mean,
Yeah, it wasn't great.
it wasn't super great, but I don't think it was. I mean, I have been in convention centers and conference rooms that were worse. Like what I mean, what the thing that made it worse was like the fact that they had the jumbotrons playing ads, and not all the most of the ads didn't have any noise, but every once in a while like this Dragon Ball Z ad would come on or whatever, and it had sound to it. So I mean, there was like you going into any space where there's just like lots of people like talking, or you get this buzz and this pressure happening. But like in some of those like conference rooms, like some of those bigger conference centers, like it can be like overwhelming. I only had to kind of like lean in, kind of put my hand behind my ear a couple times to hear what the game master was saying, but I could hear what everybody else was saying. So like I don't think it was. I mean, yes, we all had to speak up, but it wasn't like deafening, at least in my opinion. I mean, I don't know, Nolan. You probably played a few more times down
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I don't know whether I got, I don't know whether that, obviously I probably caught something that gave me my laryngitis otherwise. But yeah, it was loud, but it is fine. But I was interested, come back to something you mentioned earlier. You kind of had a different experience, RBK, running around, talking with people, shaking hands and, that kind of thing. What was that like? Was that
It was fun. I mean, like I did get to talk to some people. I mean, meet some people for the first time in person that I didn't meet a lot of people. Like I mostly just kind of like wandered around and looked at stuff. But like I hung out with shout out to Diogo. We like hung out like basically all Saturday. Just kind of like, and that guy knows everybody. Like you go from one booth to the next that's got RPGs. You're like, oh, Diogo. And um and he's, you know, it was great just kind of hanging out and like um seeing things from, people that are more public speakers, because public figures. And I had a great time just kind of like randomly talking to some other, I mean, mostly people he knows are people that have blogs or podcasts and stuff like that. But um I talked to Alan Barr and Matt Orr on, and if you see the previous episodes in the feed, that's one of them. And I talked to Scott from Storywood Games on, and the microphone sounded really good. So I just, I had a hard time like going into booths and being like, hey, is your marketing person or a designer around? Can I talk to them for 5 minutes? Like, and I talk a little bit about that in the other episode, but like, it's one of those things I was trying to do, but I couldn't quite get myself to do the thing. I basically just bought like $500 worth of RPGs, and then and then kind of lugged them around for a while and hung out and talked to people. So I really had a fun time. And we played a game back in the hotel room, Raccoon Sky Pirates. It was
I only bought $200, $250 worth of games. So
right.
yes, we
Well,
had Raccoon Sky Pirates.
and that was fun. I have some notes about that I think I want to make my own variant of that game, because I have some. It's
At some
fun,
point,
but
we should all probably also actually read the rules before playing it instead of like
that's not a game you need to know
trying
the
to
rules
build
of.
the car as we
Yeah,
drive
we
it.
were trying to like run it as, or read it as we were running it. So That's true. It worked fine. Um, but overall,
Do you want to pitch Raccoon Sky Pirates?
sure. So you're playing not anthropomorphic raccoons, you're playing actual raccoons who have somehow cobbled together some sort of airship that you'd build in the first part of the game from the different your different idea. It's like a Mad Libs, like choose a this and choose a that, and then you make this like ship, and you're trying to
You all live in a junkyard, yeah.
live in a junkyard, and you're trying to get to a house of some variety so you can steal the good trash from that house, because of course raccoons want all of the trash. And yeah, I think that was it was a great deal of fun.
Yeah, it's utter madcap nonsense. There's lots of chances for things to go awry, and yeah, the kind of things that raccoons would do. And yeah, it's utter madness and silliness, and it's good fun.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it would probably be fun to break out at like our little friend convention or whatever once somebody actually reads the rules, because I think I own it. I think uh Brad owns it, and Nolan owns it, and like it's a little box game. We should have just written on the papers. Like none of this like preserve the papers. Just like it's like it reminds me of one of those old cheap ass games from the late 90s, early 2000s, where it's like, oh, here is the rules and a few cutouts, and you provide your own tokens and your own dice and your own little pawns and stuff. Like that's kind of like the feel. Because so of course
It didn't come with a D12 with the worst design.
Oh yeah,
ever.
yeah, I think it would have made some graphic designers twitch, because every side of the D12 had a different font on it. So
and they were often comically bad fonts, because
really bad fonts, like little hard to read too. It was
or very cartoonish, or
yeah. But we
did the rules specify that you have to like find those pieces that they don't provide from the trash? Because I really feel like it should.
I mean, it probably would if we had read it, but that's exactly what we did. Is we went over to the trash and got a bottle cap out of the trash to use as our ship.
Excellent.
That's exactly what we did. So there wasn't many too many bits and pieces. I think we did use trash for our when we got to the house. We used something we used for our little pieces on the map. I can't remember what that was, but it was good times. Like I had a lot of fun just hanging out with people and talking to them that I've talked over the internet or on the show or whatever. And I met some people that haven't been on the show yet, but I'm trying to get them on the show at some point, or just get out there and have those conversations, right? So, but how was your Godless Con, Noland?
Well, I did all right. Played a few things. Let's see, what do I have here? Wednesday night before the con started, we ran For the Queen in the hotel room.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
I had not actually played that yet. I had owned it for ever and not actually played it. I know you'd played it a number of times before.
Yes.
We did that, kind of the crew from the room. Thursday I played Root with the Magpie folks.
Which could be called
and
Oops
RBK.
All Rogues.
Yeah. Root was kind of anthropomorphic animals that are all kind of sneaky rogue.
Have you guys played the board game version of that?
I have not.
I
know it is derived from.
I attempted to read the rules once and then I quit. So
I really hated the board game, like really hated it. So when they came out with the role play, I was like, I don't know about this. Like I was not a fan. But whoever ran for Magpie the year I played it did a phenomenal job. And I actually had a lot of fun in their little weird political situation that they plopped us down in. So we personally own a copy. My therapy practice owns a copy. And we have a lot of Root stuff now, which one of my kiddos keeps gravitating towards and like reading through it every time they're in the office. Like, maybe we should run this sometime.
Mm. Well,
it is a weird vibe, right? It is a weird, like, the cutesy animals are too cutesy for people who like backstabby politics, and the backstabby politics are too backstabby for the people that like cutesy animal. Like, yeah.
Well, my understanding is the whole thing is based on the Afghan conflict. So, like, you know, there is a faction that's basically like the foreign invaders. There's the faction that's the resistance. There's the faction that's the alliance. There's, you know, and that's the problem with the board game is it's an asymmetric war game. So if you don't, first of all, if you don't like war games, it's a strike against it. Second of all, everyone has to learn different rules to play it. So there's not like you'd have to teach it, you'd have to learn all the rules and teach each person individually what their rules are. Or everyone's sitting there reading their own rules, trying to like get this game going. I've had to tell multiple families when I used to do conventions, like, hey, maybe you don't want to play that if you don't have 3 hours, and your kids are not going to enjoy that no matter what it looks like.
Even though it has cute animals on it.
Even though it has cute animals. But the role-playing game, I feel like, could very well be... I mean, any D&D group, I think, could really grok this, because all of the characters are basically rogues of different stripes. And you're basically trying to survive with all these factions trying to use you as pawns, essentially.
Well, and you're coming from the Powered by the Apocalypse system, so I feel like that really helps. Like, you start with your basic player like book, right? And then you make the selections from there, so it's really easy for character gen. Yeah, no, I had a great time playing that game. I really liked the role play. I got to play some like pyromaniac, which spoke to my chaotic fire heart, so that was a lot of fun. My husband was playing the game with me, and he was like trying to be the lawful person to stop me from setting fires to literally everything. So that was just another fun fun dynamic that existed.
A metaphor for something. Anyways, yeah, it was a good time. We had a good group. I think the cutesy animals should not dissuade you from actually playing this game. That's if the playing the RPG. You maybe not gonna want the board game, but the RPG, I think it's a fine time.
Yeah. Then also on Thursday, I played Rapscallion, which is Magpie. I don't think it's in print yet, but it's their pirate PBTA thing. It's pretty good. It's got a little like Forged in the Dark kind of influence there. Definitely, because like the pirate ship has a kind of a playbook too, and our GM did a pretty good thing where we had lost the ship and we got used to the characters and so forth, and then halfway through we found the ship, and then we paused and built the character sheet for the ship and did that, and it has a bunch of cool options on there of like, oh, the ship has a magic crystal in it that always tells you the way, or the ship like there's a lot of cool weird magic pirate weirdness in there. Yeah, I played the Montebank, who had a demon and got into all kinds of trouble trying to make deals with his demon and do magic and shit. That worked out pretty well. Let's see here. Friday played Rest in Pieces. It's kind of game that uses a Jenga block with a Jenga tower with a couple different colored blocks. White for generous things or pro-social things, and black for selfish things, and
and they're different sizes, so it's easier to take the different color blocks.
Yeah, I have been told that. I don't know if it's true, but yes, I have been told that
easier to take the selfish things.
Yeah, that they'd been fun.
It slightly encourages you to be more selfish. Yes.
I'm sure
Tyler,
it
I think Tyler played with like maybe the creator or something. And I have no idea where he played. If it was Gen Con or Big Bad Con or where, but he picked it up then, and then somebody tried to use that Jenga tower for Dread, and he's like, that's not gonna work. Like, you don't want to do that.
Right.
I mean, it's an interesting crossover. I mean, I sort of think you should do it, but that's
Well, mainly they were just trying to run regular old Dread, and he's like that some of them are shaved a little bit and the others aren't. So, but he said it was a really interesting system. I don't know how you felt it was to play, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's another version of Dread. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't wildly different to me. The version of the scenario they had, was more of a comedy setup, and so it was a lot less serious and a lot less tense than Dread. But we had a good time with it. Played that one with Carter. Yeah, also on Friday I played a game based on the Chew comics books where where there was a I don't know if anybody's familiar with those, but where there's been a giant bird flu outbreak that killed tens of millions of Americans, and the FDA got all the unbounded arrest and extrajudicial powers to kind of do everything, and people start developing food-based superpowers. The comic book follows a character who has the ability to know everything that happened to anything he's eaten. So
did you
have you
Chicken
read
is illegal.
have you read the comic book?
I have read the first 4 trades
Okay.
in preparation for this game, because I bought tickets ahead of time, and you could buy trades on eBay for like $4 a piece.
Right.
Yeah, I really liked the comic books. They were good. So
yeah, so that's silliness. Played some of that.
did your character have a food power?
I did. I was a techie type person, and I could carve working tools out of chocolate.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that was silliness. Yeah, and we had to there was a illegal volcano cook-off taking place on the Food Network. It was silliness and ridiculousness. We had a good time. Let's see here. We played Raccoon Sky Pirates. I played Mazes. And Mazes Till Midnight, which was kind of an OSR kind of game. And they did it basically from 10 to midnight in kind of this ballroom that they had blacked out, and had UV light shining on everything, and all the little tokens for your health and everything were phosphorescent in the black light. And it was that was a silly fun thing. What else did I do? Yeah, some miscellaneous other things. Got a demo of Old Gods of Appalachia, which I also need to run. I'm not a full session, but the guys at the booth demoed it for me. So that one.
How was that? Was it
Yeah, I've not done Cypher before. It's kind of,
I like Cypher. I mean, it's a fine D20 variant, but
yeah. I didn't get to see a lot of the differences that are going to be in there for Old Gods, and in terms of what I assume that's mostly in terms of the ciphers and so forth, and the setting. And I know the setting from the radio drama podcast, whatever you want to call it, of kind of Lovecraft meets backwoods Appalachia. Yeah, so it was a short demo of 40 minutes or whatever. You get to see the powers and see kind of how you burn down your different traits to kind of succeed and also take damage. It's not all that dissimilar from the phase rip thing. They aren't your advancements, but they serve kind of a dual purpose. Like, you have points in speed and so forth, and you can take those as damage, or you can use them to succeed. So it's another case where you have a resource like that has 2 uses, and you have to balance how you use it and that kind of thing. Yeah, it was interesting. I'd not played Cypher before, weirdly, and it was a good opportunity to do that. And I do mean to read I'm a backer of Old Gods of Appalachia, which is why I went to go demo it. I'd like to get the group together in the backwoods of nowhere and just run some creepy Appalachian stuff in the creepy Appalachians. But
Yes.
but I just received
I'm
my
all
book
in on this plan.
I just received my book the other day, so because they had it there, and I was like, wait, I haven't got my Kickstarter thing, and they're like, actually, about 3 weeks ago, you should have clicked the thing to get your book. I'm like, damn it.
Well, they're doing it in batches too, which makes it
Yeah.
like hard to track. Like, so certain things are coming out before other things, and you have to kind of pay attention. It was like I got my dice and dice tray thing a while ago, but just got the book, and I don't know. I assume the PDF came out at some point too that I haven't claimed yet, so I should probably do that, but it looks cool. Just like a friend of mine kickstarted the die based off the graphic novels. And that book looks pretty nice too. I haven't delved into it. He's left it at the house so I can peruse it.
Nice.
Which one was your favorite of all the games that you played?
I think I was most surprised by. I think I most enjoyed the Rapscallion piece at Magpie. That was, I like a good pirate thing, and I had not found something that really scratched that itch in a while. And that was, that had a lot of, it had a lot of cool occult stuff to go along with the pirate stuff, and I definitely enjoyed that. And like all the options on the character sheets and all the options for the ships and stuff were really evocative, and I enjoyed that. So I think if I had to pick, that might be it.
Nice.
Yeah. So I have a question. Are we gonna? I mean, we're not gonna decide this here and now, but are we gonna go back to Gen Con? It's getting really, 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 really full.
It was ridiculous, and I don't I mean, like, I'm all for trying to either go. I mean, we're gonna if we want the big con lifestyle, like, there's really only two other options, right? That there's Origins and PAX Unplugged are really the two other options for like that big
And even
con.
those are like, both of those I think are like half the size of Gen Con. Like those would still be big steps down, like in
Which
terms
is
of attendance.
fine. Like, I don't need 70,000 people to play the games I want to play. I mean, matter of fact, like, I mean, I liked Big Bad Con quite a bit, but like, I don't really want to.
But that's
It's
quite
not.
small, right? That's like
Yeah,
three,
it's a
400.
few hundred people. It at some point I'll return. But that's I only need a few hundred like-minded people to play the games I want to play. So like that's fine. But I think I would like to try. I'd like to go back to Origins because it's been about 20 years since I've been to Origins, and and PAX Unplugged is really close to a lot of people that I know on the East Coast, so it's very convenient, as they say. More
Yeah, I
convenient.
have a feeling that is Tyler and I are trying to plan to go to PAX Unplugged this year just because we missed out on Gen Con. So
Yeah.
actually checking it out instead of working the whole time, which is what our experience was last time, which was fine. It was a fun experience to kind of network and do the like actually working a convention scene, but I have no opinions or input on how the gaming scene is because of it. So
Yeah,
That's
working a booth is like I said, respect the people that work the booth because they got a long slog to get through. Um
yeah, it's my intention to go up to PAX this year, and probably I'll just go up for the Saturday or whatever, just make a day trip of it. But yeah, I'd like to scope it out and see if is this what we want to do for a big con this coming year or not?
I will say my hesitation from like seeing it last year, from like just trying to get scheduled, is it really makes me nervous that I would have to schedule my events the same day. But Games on Demand was there last year. I think that they're slated to be there this year. So that's always an option if you can't get the tickets that you want, is go fill it in with some on-demand stuff.
Well, that's the problem with these bigger cons is you know, there's not a lot of, you know, there's all this hype and everyone wants it because there a lot of people are traveling, so they want to schedule their entire time up, and so you know there's not a lot of availability that's easy that you know because really realistically I want to play like 1 or 2 games a day, RPG length, right? 4 hours, 2 to 4 hour games, right? And then I want to like wander around, eat some stuff, drink some beverages, and hang out. Like,
I will say there was some legit food choices around PAX Unplugged, which was nice. Like that was a big difference that I noticed from even like Gen Con, where Gen Con has restaurants that you can certainly walk to and like get in, but they almost feel limited compared to what Unplugged has around it. And that just might be a reflection of Philadelphia versus Indianapolis.
yeah,
But
Indianapolis is like a destination downtown. Like, you don't, people don't really live too much in downtown Indianapolis, so there's not like a demand for 24-hour a day a food service of a certain quality. So and so that's why you have like the high highs and the low lows. You have both uh uh multiple subways per block and like St. Elmo's Steakhouse. Like it's like there's not like, I mean there's a few in the middle there, but it's like real hard to get into those. So you're either going to be like, hey, oh, top tip, Steak and Shake finally installed a window onto the sidewalk. So instead of standing inside of Steak and Shake and being disappointed and watching people eat while you stand in line inside of Steak and Shake, you could just walk up to the side of the building and grab a burger pretty quickly and then get it a few minutes later and then bugger off to like the open field, the little park across from the convention center, which is what I did, which was one of the nicer Zen moments I had. So but yeah, that's I hear great things about the food choices in Philadelphia. I hear, you know, because it's a you know it's an older city that had a downtown that was more alive, and it seems like they've been able to come back or maintain that sort of idea. So, and the food trucks at Gen Con were bit of a, well, as they always are. They were just a line city. It was just lines. It was all
well, I can't
lines.
imagine their normal number of food trucks because I'm assuming they didn't have
They had
add like a
more.
ton more.
They had more. They had
They
like
did.
twice as many, and the lines were twice as long.
About 70,000 people is a lot of people to jam into like that area.
Well, so it wasn't on George Street anymore.
Georgia.
It's Georgia Street. It's on South Street between the convention center and Lucas Oil. They just shut down that road
Mm-hmm.
between the convention center and the football stadium, and then they put all the trucks right there. But and the noodle line was super long, but that place is like you have two options: you want noodles or noodles with chicken, and it just moves really very very quickly.
Yeah, they turn and burn some
But
food.
that's the top tip. But there was a lot of food trucks I would have liked to try, but every time I looked at one, the line got longer, and I was like, nope, I'm gonna go over here. So, um, yeah, I there is something to be said about Gen Con itself and the, you know, it's the big show, right? And the people, the international people that show up, and you know, I met Nor of and all that, the crew of the Stockholm Cartel crew at the Free League booth, you're not going to meet those guys at most other American conventions. Um, you know, also we might have some content from them from a while ago. That'll be fun. But I I in some ways I will miss it. In other ways, I only really need to go to Gen Con every like 3 years or something like that. So, or
I will
4 years.
say that I think that they might be the only ones, or at least I've only seen the like pre-convention business side of things where you can actually go and get training. And I thought that that was like really cool the year that I went there and did training, because they do like RPGs and in the classroom stuff. And so like teachers can come and learn how to use some of the like games and stuff that you can buy there at Gen Con in their classroom to like kind of help with engagement and stuff. And that was a really interesting thing that I'm not sure a like smaller convention would have.
No, generally they won't. I mean, there is they have a very healthy you know, presentation track that I've never actually gone to any of them, but some of them look cool, just never got around to it. And a lot of them sell out. So
Yeah.
that's the other part of Gen Con that like is sort of slightly annoying is it does cost you at least $2 to do anything with an event. There are there's some free things you can just show up to, but for the most part, it's going to cost you money to stand in space. And that's I think that's the way of the future. I think that's how most conventions are going to be able to like handle the increased prices of a lot of stuff. But
And it's how, especially since Gen Con turned over this is, I mean, inside baseball is Gen Con, but like it used to be, the prices at Gen Con were like $2 for a 2-hour game and or any fraction thereof, and $4 for a 4-hour game, and it was just all standard pricing and so forth. And if you worked so many hours running games and so forth, Gen Con would comp your badge, and if you work the whole weekend running games and so forth, Gen Con will comp your hotel room shared with 3 other people. Um, and that ability for GMs to basically come for free if they worked the whole weekend, basically 8 hours a day, was one way they kept themselves in GMs and so forth. Well, it's been a while now. I don't know, 6 years or something back, 5 years back. I don't remember. They let people raise those prices above the $2 for 2 hours, and sell like $8 tickets to a 4-hour game, and they let the GMs then pocket some of that profit on top of Gen Con's kind of base price that covers the rooms and so forth. And I think they're hoping, that's going to keep them in GMs and so forth if people can make a little money running games at the con, that they'll have enough GMs to cover, the number of events they need to provide entertainment for 70,000 people. I think that's what they're trying to do there with that. And I don't know, like, if it's successful, like, but it sure is shitty for people who, can't afford it. But like,
right.
Well, it's also one of those like, hopefully you do well at picking your GMs, because are they necessarily worth the
right.
extra money that you're kicking towards them? Because the last time I went, some of them were like, "Oh, I just got the PDF of this game last night." And I'm like, "Why are you running this at Gen Con?"
Right. And I
So,
understand with certain publishers, they need somebody to fill in, in one of their GM spots or whatever. But usually those publishers are not running the, game that costs $16, right? Which is not an exaggeration. Like there was, some people from our group that went $16, $20 for a 4-hour game, right? And Yeah. Hopefully, if you're charging that much for a game, your GM is really, you're really providing a quality kind of thing at that point. I hope, but
At least I hope you have vetted your GM to the point of like, cool, you represent the gaming experience that we want our players to see.
Yeah.
Well,
in some way at least.
I mean, I think I haven't signed up for any of these companies, but that's not the impression I get. I think it's just like they're banking that their fan base is the kind of people that they want to run games, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, I think we're gonna have to continue this conversation about whether we're gonna go to Gen Con or not. I think Gen Con is one of those things where like sort of feel like it should plateau, like there shouldn't be more people there, like just like the space just does not allow that many more people. But I suspect there's going to be a record turnout next year, like with or without us. So
well, at a certain point it probably has to turn into like the Comic-Con situation where you sell out. Like sold out is not just
and they did
individual games, but it's like the convention is sold out.
And they did, all over the front of the by Friday morning or whatever, all the front doors to the convention center said there are no more Saturday passes and all 4-day badges are sold out.
Good.
The end. Right. Like, so yeah, there was, you could still get a Sunday badge, but for the, just the half day that the con exists on Sunday. But yeah.
I mean, if we go back, I'm definitely gonna try and like sell my badge on Sunday, because the line on Sunday was just crazy. Like I don't understand it, because we were just like walking around because I was waiting for my dad to pick me up, and like we were walking around and like the line was just insane, and I was like, what are all these people gonna do with the rest of the day? Because it's gonna take hours to get to the ticket. I was like, who wants to give me $50 for this badge right now? Because I guarantee you someone been like sold. And
right.
And that may be another Buzzkill tip, is just like, if you're not going to do anything on Sunday, just sell your badge to some person that's in line, because it's insane. Like I don't even, it's hard for me to logically think they should allow the lines to even get that long on Sunday. It's like, oh, we're sold out on Sunday, but they got a business, they got to run it. And hey, we're kept in business by the amazing patrons of patreon.com/fullmetalrpg. I want to thank them thoroughly for putting up with the summer vacation, the summer gap. I did pause the billing for August, so we got some, content a little in June and nothing in July. And I just felt like we'll just pause August to make up for July and put out some content, and then get back on schedule for September. And I've got a couple things lined up for September, but we're gonna get back into this making content thing, and I think we've got some fun ideas coming up. So patreon.com/fullmetalrpg if you want to be part of the zealots, the crew, the Discord. The Discord itself is free, but we have a little Patreon area on there where I'm going to post an unedited version of this show, where we're going to have a little, because usually we'll say something like, oh man, I wish we had said that on the show, right after I say goodbye. So I'm gonna try that ploy. So we're gonna post that in the Patreon channels in the Discord, because more people are gonna see it than actually posting it on Patreon. But I'll probably post it there too. Yeah. So thanks everybody for hanging out and talking about Marvel and Gen Con. I might even divide this into 2 episodes. So, you might get 2 episodes uninterrupted on the Patreon, because we're at like an hour and a half. So, well, thanks everybody. Have a good night.